Custody. Legal responsibility came when an individual promised to keep or guard a person, animal, or thing. Genesis 30:31. Reuben, as the firstborn of Jacob, was responsible in the case of Joseph's disappearance. Genesis 37:21, 22, 29, 30. The custodian was to give sufficient care to what was in charge. What was in his charge? He had to restore animals stolen, but not those that died of themselves or that were lost through events beyond his control, such as a raid by armed sheep rustlers. If an animal was killed by a wild beast, evidence of the torn animal had to be produced to clear the custodian of responsibility. Genesis 37:12 to 30, 32 and 33, Exodus 22:10 to 13. Slavery. Slaves might be purchased or might be sought such through birth to slave parents. Genesis 17:12 and 27. Slaves could enjoy a very honored position in the patriarchal household, as was the case with Abraham's servant Eliezer. Genesis 15:2, 24, 1 through 4. Law of God to Israel, the law of Moses. Jehovah gave Israel the law through Moses as mediator. In the wilderness of Sinai, 1513 BCE, at the inauguration of the law at Mount Horeb, there was an awe inspiring demonstration of Jehovah's power. Exodus 19:16 through 19, chapter 20, 18 to 21, Hebrews 12, 18 to 21, 25, and 26. The covenant was validated by the blood of bulls and goats. The people presented communion offerings, and they heard the book of the covenant read to them, after which they agreed to be obedient to all that Jehovah had spoken. Many of the earlier patriarchal laws were incorporated in the law given through Moses. Exodus 24, 3 to 8, Hebrews 9, 15 through 21. The first five books of the Bible, Genesis to Deuteronomy, are often referred to as the Law. Sometimes this term is used with reference to the entire inspired Hebrew scriptures. Generally, however, the Jews considered the entire Hebrew scriptures to be composed of three sections: the Law of Moses, the Prophets, and Psalms. Luke 24:44. Commands that came through the prophets were binding upon Israel. Jehovah was identified in the law as absolute sovereign and also as king in a special way. Since Jehovah was both God and king of Israel, disobedience to the law was both a religious offense and lese majesté, an offense against the head of state, which in this case was against the king of Jehovah. David, Solomon, and their successors on the throne of Judah were said to sit on Jehovah's throne. First Chronicles 29 to 23. Human kings and rulers in Israel were bound by the law, and when they became despotic, they were law violators accountable to God. First Samuel 15:22 to 23. Kingship and priesthood were separate. This separation constituting a balance of power and a safeguard against tyranny. It kept the Israelites even mindful that Jehovah was their God and real king. Each individual's relationship to God and to his fellow men was defined by the law, and each individual could approach God through the priestly arrangement. The law gave the Israelites the opportunity to become a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Exodus 19:5 and 6. The law demands of exclusive devotion to Jehovah, its absolute prohibition of any form of interfaith, and its regulations concerning religious cleanness and diet consumptions. A law to keep the nation outstandingly separate from other nations. Ephesians 2:14. A Jew could hardly enter a Gentile tent or house to eat with Gentiles without becoming religiously unclean. In fact, when Jesus was on earth, even entering a Gentile house or building was thought to make a Jew unclean. John 18:28, Acts 10:28. The sanctity of life and the dignity and honor of the family or of marriage of person were protected. Additional effects, which could be considered incidental to the religious separation that the law covenant accomplished, were the health benefits and the protection from diseases common to the nations around the Israelites. The laws of moral cleanness, physical sanitation, and diet undoubtedly had a salutary effect when they were obeyed. By the real purpose of the law was, as stated by the Apostle Paul, to make transgressions manifest, until the seed should arrive. It was a tutor leading to Christ. It pointed to Christ as the objective aim at Christ is the end of the law. It revealed that all humans, including the Jews, were under sin and that life cannot be obtained by works of law. Galatians 3:19 to 24, Romans 3:20, Romans chapter 10 and 4. It was spiritual, from God and holy. Romans 7:12 and 14, Ephesians 2:15. It is called the law of commandments, consisting in decrees. It was a standard of perfection, making the one who could keep it as perfect worthy of life. Leviticus 18:5, Galatians 3:12. Since imperfect humans could not keep the law, it showed that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Romans 3:23. Only Jesus Christ kept it blamelessly. John 8:46 and Hebrews 7:26. The law also served as a shadow of good things to come, and things connected with it were typical representations, causing Jesus and the apostles to call upon it often to explain heavenly things and matters concerning Christian doctrine and conduct. Therefore, it provides an essential and necessary field of study for the Christian. Hebrews 10:1, chapter 9 and 23. Jesus said that the whole law hung upon the two commandments, to love God and to love one's neighbors. Matthew 22:35 to 40. It is interesting that in the book of Deuteronomy, where the law was modified somewhat to govern Israel's new circumstances upon settling in the promised land, the Hebrew words of love, loved, and so forth appear more than 20 times. The 10 words, Exodus 34:24, or 10 commandments, were the basic part of the law but were combined with about 600 other laws, all of which were of equal force and binding power upon the Israelites at James 2:10. The first of 4 of the 10 commandments define man's relationship to God. The fifth to God and to parents, and at least 5 to one's fellow man. These last 5 were named in apparent order of severity of harm done to one's fellow man's: murder, adultery, stealing, bearing false witness, and covetousness, or foolish, selfish desire. The 10th commandment makes the law unique in comparison with the laws of all other nations in that it prohibits selfish desire. A command in reality enforceable only by God is actually got at the cause of violation of all the other commandments. Exodus 20:2 to 17, Deuteronomy 5:6 to 21, Ephesians 5:5, Colossians 3:5, James 1:14 and 15, 1 John 2:15 through 17. The law contained many principles and guiding statutes. The judges were given latitude to investigate and consider motives and attitude of violators, along with the circumstances surrounding the violation. A deliberate, disrespectful, or unrepentant violator received the full penalty. Numbers 15, 30, and 31. In other cases, a lighter judgment might be determined. For example, whereas a murderer was to be put to death without fail, an accidental manslaughter could receive mercy. Numbers 35, 15, and 16. The number of a bull that habitually gored people and that killed a man might die, or the judges might impose a ransom. Exodus 21:29 to 32. The difference between a deliberate thief and a wrongdoer who voluntarily confessed eventually accounts for the difference between the penalty stated at Exodus 22:7 and of that at Leviticus 6:1 through 7.